But my dream is to really start a new movement and a new finance brand or banking brand in the United States. We call it RF banking, as you will read at the end of the book. And I call it RF banking because it stands for Riba Free, and actually the Riba Free Banking movement is a movement that brings with it a lot of social responsibility, a lot of new thinking, a lot of new lifestyle for all people of all faith. Actually, the whole thing started in the beginning of the 20th century, in the middle of the 20th century, when people started making cooperatives to help each other finance their agricultural needs and their small village needs, and that grew into a big banking operation, which is really the Grameen Bank experience at Bangladesh, reincarnated again in Bangladesh. And then we started looking for the roots of difficulties, and it was the way people look at money, and the idea that if you have money, then you will be able to make money. If you don't have money, then you will never be able to make money, and you will always be poor. The idea of money is something that you can rent, and those who are rich, they are privileged and they can rent the money, but those who are poor, they cannot even get in the bank. So this whole thing started with a concept in the 1950s called interest-free banking. And then the name was changed. Actually, we take responsibility for that into the name Riba Free Banking in the 80s. And then later on, it became what we want to call it RF banking, because in my research, I discovered that in the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition, and in the Muslim tradition, they all agree in calling it ribit, or R-I-B-I-T, in the Old Testament, New Testament, which is riba in Islam. And the purpose of this course really is to make history by the fact that this is the first course to be taught in what I call the RF Institute for Banking and Finance. And I hope that this institute will grow much bigger within 2 or 3 years, where we can teach monetary theory, where we can teach economics, macroeconomics, from the RF point of view, and done by very, very well-positioned professors in the United States and maybe in England. And most importantly, we want to do monetary theory, which is a theory that actually talks about money, how money is created, international exchange rates, how they are set, and so on and so forth, because this is really the root and the core of the problems that we have been having in the world. And all big things start small, and I hope that within 5 years this institute will be a very respectable institute that will offer, inshallah, MBAs for distinguished men and women like the ones who are sitting around the tables. Okay, this is a summary of Chapter 2. In Chapter 1, I talk about my story with riba-free banking and finance, or used to be called Islamic banking. And one of the reasons why I wanted to take that Islamic word away and call it RF banking is to expand the potential of this brand of banking. When you call it Islamic, then you make it exclusive to people of the Islamic faith. We want to include people of the Buddhist faith. We want to include people of the Hindu faith, of the Sikh faith, of the Jewish faith, of the Christian faith, of the Muslim faith in America, so we can celebrate this wonderful unison, the wonderful rainbow of colors of different faith. And I believe that the expression of faith is something that's very personal, and people express their gratitude and love to God in different ways. And what's important is how to translate this into your transactions, how you translate this into your dealing with people, and that's really the real evaluator of who you are and what you believe in. When people ask me what is RF banking, for those who do not know, we just tell them R stands for responsible finance. But those who know, or at least can listen to us, we tell them it's Riba Free Financing and Riba Free Financing. It is socially responsible, and it's moral and faith-based banking. We've been doing this since 1987, and our motivation is hopefully to open an interfaith peace window with mutual respect and harmony through the RF financing work. We need to build communities that are strong, that are respectable to each other, serving all people of all faith. We need to empower all people, especially the new Americans. I remember when I came to the United States, I didn't know my way to the bank. My relationship with the bank was simply to put money and cash checks. When I was in Wisconsin, we discovered, my wife Magda and I, that every time you write a check, they charge us 10 cents as a check cash fee. So we closed our account, but we didn't know that when you close your account, you could not cash your university teaching assistant check. So we had to walk a long distance to cash it from the administration building. That's all we knew about banks. And what we want to bridge that gap amongst the new arrivals, the new Americans, people who are new immigrants, who are really underserved. We want to help them own a car, hopefully own a home, hopefully own a business, and to become full-fledged participant in the American lifestyle. Then they can actually participate and celebrate being an American. The last important value that we believe in, we do not run after oil money. People who think that we are a riba-free financial institution, they jump to the conclusion that they must have Saudi oil money or Qatar oil money or Emirates oil money. You are all participants in our actions. We don't have any of this money. It's all our savings, and we believe in putting our money where our mouth is. There are some language situations. Of course, we've been seeing a lot of media campaigns about Sharia, changing the laws of America, and that is really far from the truth. Most of the Muslims don't even understand what the Sharia is, and let alone the West. Sharia, in my humble opinion, as you have read in Chapter 2, I translated in Judeo-Christian Islamic discipline, on which the law in the United States was built. I don't know if you know this or not. If you go to the Supreme Court, you will find the sources of law in the United States, including Prophet Moses and Jesus, and even an image of the Prophet in a statue, Prophet Muhammad, in the Supreme Court. If you go to Yale University, where my son-in-law went to school, as you enter the law school, you will find actually statutes of the Old Testament and the Quran and the New Testament. And that's what I call the Judeo-Christian Islamic values or law. As you know, we celebrate the Judeo-Christian America, but I think we need to expand it and enrich it to make it a Judeo-Christian Islamic America, and I hope Buddhist, and I hope Hindu, whatever any community can contribute, we are happy and honored to include it. And then we talked about RF banking. Now, the work of this lecture and actually Chapter 2 has been contributed to by a number of our friends that we have made over the years. At the University of Judaism, the late Professor Rabbi Wolf died about a year and a half ago. God bless his soul. And there's another rabbi who is well situated in the area of Riba Free Financing, Rabbi Yusuf Kanevsky in North Hollywood. Professor John Goldday from Australia, who teaches the Old and New Testament at the Evangelical Fuller Seminary here in Pasadena, very close to where I live and where the Pasadena office is. And Professor Christopher Kezar, who was Catholic, and he teaches at Loyola Marymount University, and myself. The spirit of removal of riba is a very interesting spirit because it developed over the years. As you know, when Prophet Moses came, the Jews were in slavery and captivity in Egypt. And Moses came to liberate them and to free them. So it was the age of the slavery. If you read the Bible or the Quran or the Old Testament, you read the story of Prophet Joseph. And Prophet Joseph is the prophet that entered Egypt in a very fascinating, miraculous way, not very much different from Prophet Moses. Prophet Joseph, his brothers were jealous of him. They dropped him in the well, and then he was rescued by the Pharaoh of Egypt, and they took him and raised him at home. And then he was, after being raised, and a lot of details, I don't want to go into it, he became a very trusted person of Pharaoh. So Pharaoh asked him, "What do you want to be?" He said, "I want to be the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve System of Egypt. I want to be the Greenspan and the Bernanke of Egypt." And that was Joseph. And that gave a lot of power to the people of Joseph, who became the Hebrews afterwards. That power actually was translated into money, and money was used for speculation, and that speculation slowly got into the Jewish community and made them, instead of the owners of properties and money, made them the slaves of the ancient Egyptians. And of course, what happened, we all know. So Moses came actually in the age of slavery. He came in an age where money was used to enslave people, take advantage of people, to abuse people. And the teachings of Moses in the Torah was not to give loans to the poor, and we'll go into the details. The second development was Jesus. When Jesus came, God's peace and prayers be upon them all. When he came, he expanded the teachings of Moses in a society that was slavery, agricultural, agrarian society. Agrarian society is a society where people keep amassing more and more agricultural land, then they can control more people and again enslave them. Now, when Islam came, it added two things, and this is very interesting, and it should be known because many of the Muslims even don't know that. The first thing is it canonized the two laws of Moses and of Jesus. So now it became a law not to give a loan. The only loan that is allowed is a loan without an interest, and it's called the good loan, the good-hearted loan, which actually, when you give that loan, you have deep in your heart that you may not get it back. And if you don't get it back, you don't take the person who took it to the cleaners. And that's the only loan. And the word used for a loan is qard, or a bite. So a bite out of your own flesh, as you know from the famous story. So and actually in Hebrew it's neche, and in English it is a bite, and in Arabic it is a qard. So the word qard is taking a piece of somebody's properties or flesh, and that's not allowed canonically in Islam based on the teachings of Moses and the teachings of Jesus. May God's peace and prayers be upon them all. That's the first part. Now the second part was very interesting, because when Islam came, a new development in the world relationships has developed. Now we moved from a slavery-based society to an agricultural-based society with slaves in it. And now we moved into a commercial society, the commercial society whereby the caravans were trotting the desert, going into Ethiopia, and from Ethiopia to India, and India to China, and China to Syria, Lebanon, and back into the Arabian Peninsula, and of course into the Roman Empire, into the Persian Empire. And every time you go from one place to another trading, the currencies used in these different regions were different. The profits made were made in local currencies. So the big challenge was there were two challenges. The first one was how to translate the profit into a standardized reference currency that can be used as a fair tool to distribute profits, evaluate profits, and distribute them. And the second and most important thing was that if you are a businessman doing trading, you want to grow your business, so you needed financing, not because you are poor, but because you wanted to expand your business. And the real contribution of Islam at that time was to develop ways and means and systems by which you devise systems that would finance businesses. And when you devise that, it became a fantastic opportunity for others to learn, including helping the people of the Jewish faith in the darkest times of their lives, as we will talk about. These are the three important developments, in my opinion. So I'm sure you read the different verses 24 to 26, and there are some operative words here. The word Ami, which is my people, and actually it's very similar to the word Ummah in the Islamic context. It shows you the proximity between the two faiths, actually the three faiths. Now, the word Ami, my people, actually created a lot of questions. Who are my people? This is God talking as my people. Is it the people of the Jewish faith only are my people? People of the Christian faith only are my people? Or people of the Muslim faith only are my people? Or all people, all right? So, shall you impose, nor shall you impose upon him any interest. And then comparing the taking of interest as taking of the garment out of somebody's body and making him naked. And the only covenant is his garment for his skin, in what shall he sleep? And it shall come to pass that if he cries out unto me, I will hear it, for I am compassionate. Now, in the Jewish biblical attitude, the law is based on the important word, which is Ami, my people. And in it, God specifically regards those in need of loans as being his special people. So if you listen to a Jewish rabbi scholar, he will tell you that we believe that God actually looks at those who are poor, who are needy, who need help, as his special people. And he is very close to them. And if you lend them money, the lender should regard it as an honor to assist those people of God, and must conduct his or her affairs accordingly. And I'm not going to read everything, so please go ahead and read. But I want to conclude by saying even a facial gesture that shows that you are disappointed or upset or something can be taken against you. Not very much different from the teachings we have in the Islamic faith. Now, there are people at that time, like now, claim that loan is a transaction that benefits the lender and the borrower, but the Torah rejects that. Now, the Rabbinical interpretation say that the lender is prohibited from charging interest, number one, and the borrower is prohibited from offering to pay interest. So, not very much different from what we learn in the Islamic faith, that both the borrower and the lender are prohibited from that kind of transaction. There is also a body of law in the Jewish faith called the halakha, the halakha, which is the rabbinical law, which comes from actually the circle or the board or the halakha in the Islamic tradition, where the lawmakers sit down in a circle in a synagogue and sit down and develop legal systems and laws that go with it. In it, we say a person who either lends or voluntarily borrows on interest is disqualified from being a witness in a Jewish court. Until today, if somebody is lending with interest, you cannot stand as a witness in a Jewish court. Now, there are some other things that people, of course, smart people are all over the place any time of history. Nowadays, we have structuring lawyers who try to, they call it optimization of your taxes, tax planning, and so on and so forth. At the time, of course, there were people who were trying to use ruses and ways to get around the law. So some of them said, fine, I'm not going to charge interest, but I'm going to ask the person who borrows money from me to give me a room in his house so I can live freely. That is considered an interest. Or I'm going to ask the person who owes me money to work 2 days a week for me for free, and the price of that is not really free, but he's going to pay. All of these are considered interest. Not only that, but if you take money actually from somebody and you ask him for any favor, that also is considered as interest, and it is prohibited in the Jewish tradition. I'm going to go to two important events. One is Moses Maimonides. I don't know if you know this or not, but Moses Maimonides actually flourished. He came from Spain. His brother was a big gold trader, and he flourished in Egypt because he was the special doctor of Saladin in Egypt at that time, and he was the most influential member of the Saladin court. And he's the one who actually treated Richard the Lion's Heart in the famous Crusades story. But Maimonides also was a very famous scholar in Judaism and a famous rabbi. And he wrote a book called The Laws of Loans. And in chapter 5, law number 2, he says, now, this is the beginning of the permission of the people of the Jewish faith to charge interest. And look at how he wrote it for specific reasons. It is permissible for a Jew to charge interest to a non-Jew only when and in the amount necessary to provide himself with a basic living. Now, at the time, there were tremendous discrimination against the Jews in Europe. You could not actually extract their daily livings. So the only way they could do it was through money, and that was the first beginning of the allowance of charging interest to non-Jews. But it is prohibited to charge usurious rates. Now, the great rabbis of the medieval France and Germany actually did the same, and they became more permissive, and you can read it actually for yourself. Okay. Then, in the 16th century lifestyle, where we have less agraria and so on, there was a problem in Europe, in Poland, what's now Poland and Germany and France and so on and so forth, was how to conduct commercial loans and commercial activities, like I was saying, in the Jewish tradition, which prohibits interest. So the rabbis, in their halakha, developed something called heter iska. And the heter iska, if you read it, it's verbatim, the same as what we call in the Islamic commercial code musharaka, or joint venture in our commercial code in the Western context. So it's a musharaka, it's a joint venture, and I wrote about it in the book in chapter 2 in more details. And the heter iska, I want you to read this while I'm talking. And this was really the definition. And the heter iska, the technical redefinition of it as an investment which is our way of looking at things in the RF banking. We look at every financing as an investment, as a co-investment. We evaluate it in that fashion, in that light. We are not money lenders. We are actually investors. So this allows the Jewish commercial enterprises to succeed without violating the laws of the interest, and the heter escrow is in common use to this day amongst people of the Jewish faith. In every synagogue in the world, until today, there are interest-free loan societies that are available to all Jewish communities to preserve both the spirit and the letter of the laws on interest. And this is often administered by the local Jewish federations or other community-wide organizations, and they are considered the embodiment of the words of the Torah. Now we go to Catholicism. Of course, Catholicism became the first and major organized body of Christianity, and in Christianity, the Bible is the teachings of Jesus. May God's peace and prayers be upon him. Now, of course, we know that Jesus was a Jew, and he wanted to reform what happened to Judaism by the revelation of the New Testament. So one interesting thing which I witnessed when I was growing up, and I'm really interested in these things since my younghood, when you went to Europe and you looked at the Bible, it was only the New Testament. But something happened whereby in the middle of the 20th century, the Old Testament and the New Testament got fused together into one big volume, which we call the Bible. And not too many people know that this is what we call the Bible, consists of two books, the Torah, or actually the Old Testament, and the New Testament. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. Now, let's talk about, in summary, the position of the Catholic Church on usury or interest. Now, I just want to elaborate here the word usury. Now, if you ask anybody in the modern era, what is usury? What is usury, Bill?
The charging of excessive interest.
The charging excessive interest. So if you ask what is usury, it's you're charging excessive interest. But what is excessive? I mean, is 10% excessive? Yes, today it is excessive. But in the 1980s, 10% was not excessive because the going rate at the time was 18%. So this is the going meaning of it. But the original meaning of the word usury in the Catholic tradition is to pay for the use of money. And frankly, I never understood the laws of riba in Islam until I went back to study it in Judaism and Christianity, because then and only then I understood. I said, aha, now this is where it comes from. So usury is to pay for the use of money. In other words, renting money at a price called interest rate, and that is the definition of ribit or riba. Now, then the Catholic Church, as we will see, have split that rent of money into two pieces, a rent which can be allowed and a rent which is prohibited, and that's when the excessive rate came in. So the Church maintains that usury is wrong, but does not hold and never did hold that all charging whatsoever of amounts beyond the principal is wrong. And this is a statement made by Professor Kazar, but I kind of disagree with him, because if you read the Lantern in the Catholic Church, the original ones, you can't help but conclude that it is forbidden. Actually, one of the studies made on the Catholic Church and what happened in Venice and the charging of interest, that many of those money lenders that were lending money to their subjects, they wanted to seek salvation in the church. So to seek salvation, they paid money, they paid things in kind, like very expensive paintings and artifacts. And that was the beginning of the decoration of churches in Italy with artifacts and artwork and paintings and so on and so forth. That, of course, developed into what we see today. So the Old Testament, which is called the Torah in the Jewish tradition, and in the Christian tradition, the Old Testament, but in the Christian evangelical tradition, it's called the Mosaic laws, the laws of Moses, or it is called the Old Testament as we know it. The New Testament consists of 4 books written by 4 different saints of Jesus. They are the same content with different language and emphasis. St. Matthew, St. Mark, and St. Luke, and John. And then at the end of it, there are a number of letters written between Jesus and his disciples. And I'm not here in the Bible. Of course, I have had the honor of going to Fuller Seminary, and I audited a full course on the Bible. I think it was 2004. Now, the interest in the Catholic tradition was condemned by many, many sources, and please read it, because I don't want to just read what is on the slide, and you can read that for yourself. And then there is a Canon 13 of the Second Lateran Council in 1139, which condemns the practice. Now, look at this underlined statements here, which is fascinating. We, first of all, the ferocious greed is condemned. And the church says, we sever them from every comfort of the church. And the church says, forbidding any archbishop or bishop or an abbot of any order whatever, or anyone in clerical orders to dare to receive usurers, unless they do so with extreme caution, but let them be held infamous throughout their whole lives, and unless they repent, be deprived of a Christian burial. There are two very important, there is one very important scholar in the Catholic Church that marked the beginning of the give-in. It's like, you know, if you ask when is the turning point or the beginning of the avalanche, who started it? In Judaism, it was Maimonides. In the Catholic Church was St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, St. Thomas Aquinas, actually, in his time, they were faced with a big problem. The big problem was that the church is not getting richer, but people with the money of the Jewish faith who applied the laws with all of the ruses, they started enriching themselves. So they wanted to get a way out. So St. Thomas Aquinas actually wrote in his most famous work, the Summa Theologia, saying that to make money by usury is exceedingly unnatural, which is acceptable. But then a study of him by John Finnis says that St. Thomas Aquinas did not view money making as inherently wrong. So that's the first premise. So if others are making money, why can't we make money as Catholic? It is wrong to make money simply for the sake of making money. So it's I don't know if you have seen John Reed on Bill Moyer last weekend, and his remark was that when he was acquired by Sandy Wiles, Travelers Group and Smith Barney, and it became Citigroup, his bonus increased from $1.5 million to $15 million, and he asked him why. He said, well, because we are in the business of making money. So here's another statement. Long time ago, you cannot just make money simply for the sake of making money. There's nothing objectionable about making money to sustaining households, helping the poor, and public benefit. Trading is not wrong in itself, and so on. And then it puts down the requirement of not deceiving the buyer. You have to disclose what's good and what's bad about the merchandise. He first said that charging interest on a loan is wrong, and then assumes that money is a sterile, and this is very important to understand. It is non-fungible commodity. Lenders cannot charge interest on lending. And then we have the exceptions here. The exceptions are, well, okay, if I give money to somebody who needs money, how can I insure it? So you apply insurance on it. Well, what's insurance? It's implied interest. Another way of doing it is by saying, well, I want to get indemnified for the losses. That also is an interest. So there are so many ways to skin a cat, and all of these ways were practiced. Noonan notes that the contemporary Catholic Church does not abide by the teachings, especially after the Protestant reforms in 1517. Now the Catholic Church, now with all of these restrictions, was met with another challenge, and that was, of course, Martin Luther, who came in the 16th century, and of course he wanted to reform the church, and he has had a different look on interest and so on and so forth. So a new spirit in the church came in. And then the canon in 1917 that required Catholic institutions now, for the first time, openly to invest directly in bonds, take interest, to invest directly in the stock market, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, I'll let you read the rest in the book. Now, in the Christian tradition, which is the evangelical church traditions, it puts more emphasis on the teachings of Moses. As a matter of fact, if you read the first writings of Martin Luther, you'll find that Martin Luther writes that Moses is the origin of Christianity. So we need to look at the Old Testament at the origin of our faith, and people of the Jewish faith need to be redirected to get to know Jesus. And I invite you, those who are interested in Martin Luther, Google Martin Luther and look at his books, especially his last book about his disappointment of being not able to bring the people of the Jewish faith into his fold of evangelical Christian. At the time it was called the Protestant movement. So they focus more on the laws of Moses, and they say that the laws of Moses never said not to take interest, as long as you're not discriminating amongst people. You lend your enemy as much as you lend your friend, and interest is not part of the equation. I'm going to go through this. And in the New Testament, there are similar issues raised by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mountain about taking advantage of the poor and the needy. And in a more commercial context and a competitive situation, people might charge interest on commercial loans. There's no problem, without infringing the principle underlying teachings of abusing the trust. And I'm going to leave you to read that. Now, in the Islamic, Judeo-Christian Islamic law, and this is the last piece of the lecture, there are three pillars of the economic system. First pillar is money and investments. The other pillar is inheritance, and the third pillar is almsgiving. So money and investments and dealings, we look at money the same way as the original Catholic Church looked at it, and as the Judaic teachings looked at it, as a thing. It cannot be rented out at a price called interest. That is prohibited. And riba, I think I explained, riba is actually sometimes called interest, but it is the act of renting money at a price called interest rate. And the third is the fact that buying and selling must involve a real property. You cannot buy and sell money. You cannot buy and sell paper or actually promissory notes. You only can buy and sell tangible assets, real property that can command a price on the market or have an intrinsic value. And when you do this, it has to be free of gharar, G-H-A-R-A-R, which free of deception and misrepresentation. And the word gharar actually means your dealings must be free of deception and misrepresentation, that speculation is not allowed, trying to predict what will happen in the future. Maneuvering paper trading is not allowed, and prices should be marked to the market. And the sources are the Quran, and I already put them in the book, chapters 2, 3, 4, and 30. I think I'm going to give you an overview of what we talked about. I talked about the qard, which means to bite, taking a bite, and in Islam, which is actually based on the Judeo-Christian Islamic laws, which is Jewish, Christian, and Islamic, same law, saying that it is prohibited to take advantage of people, and we put the law that there is no bite except the good bite. And the good bite means that whatever you give, you expect back. If you don't get back, then you don't take people to the cleaners, so to speak. In the Hebrew language, the language of the Torah, they use the word neshek or nesha, which is not only a bite, but a grab away from somebody. And then in the Quranic language, Ummah and Ami, we talked about. And we talked about the prohibition of usury, and we defined what usury means. And then I want to get into a little expansion of this idea that started with the Catholic Church and then was perfected in our work here in the Judeo-Christian Islamic law. There are two rights that anyone can sell. You can sell the right to own the property, which is what we call the right to sell title. So because then it will be yours. And also, if you own title, you can sell the use of that property. In other words, I can own title to a house, but that house has a use. The use of it is somebody comes and lives in it. So I can keep the title of the house and sell the ability to use it to somebody by renting it to him. And that is the separation of these two titles is very, very significant in the work that we'll be doing in the RF financing. And I think those who do the contracts in Pasadena or in Whittier understand what I'm talking about. So money is a fungible thing. Why is it fungible? Because if money is given to somebody, he will use it in something, he cannot give it back to me, so I cannot rent it. Exactly like an apple. If I give it to somebody, he cannot rent it from me because if he leaves it on the table for a week, it will be destroyed, it will rot, or if he eats it, I cannot get it back. But a real estate property, an automobile, these are not actually fungibles, these are non-fungibles, and the title can be transferred for a price in a fair, open buy-sell agreement. And this is called movables and immovables. So this is something that I want to introduce you to. And this is a summary. Through the first millennium, the Christian Church affirmed the Old Testament principles. Lending on interest was disapproved on the continuing presupposition that lending was an aspect of care for the needy. In practice, lending on interest was tolerated as long as rates were not judged excessive, now called usury. Where Christians refused to engage in commercial lending, Jewish moneylenders were able to fill the vacuum on the basis of the Deuteronomy permission to charge interest to foreigners. And this was a very significant permission that was done with this verse that actually prompted the church to catch up and try to also make money as the people of the Jewish faith did. In 15th century Italy, we talked about the developments and the commercial developments. The two very well-known scholars that actually participate. I just wanted to give you a picture of the two scholars, St. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century, responsible for the relaxation of the Catholic laws, and of course the very famous John Calvin from the Protestant movement in the 16th century. And of course, there are some other items that I wanted to leave. So to conclude, riba, which is prohibited by the Islamic faith, actually it is a Judeo-Christian Islamic law, has been prohibited in the Torah and in the Bible. The strict codes of prohibition were relaxed to a lesser extent in Judaism and in Christianity. And we are actually now working with many groups in the Jewish movement and the Christian movement to bring those to bear, so we can invite people to live a debt-free lifestyle, or RF lifestyle. That's all I have. Thank you very much.